Welcome to the reading of Duplicity and Duress, Snap Factories in the Making by Erin Vans, my pseudonym. I'll be reading from the 10th chapter of my book entitled Kiera The Sad State of. Listen along and enjoy. What kind of human being would trick, deceive, and betray another like that? Kiera The Sad State of. We sauntered around Petco looking at the hundreds of betta fish, each in their own tiny little round fish bowls lining the shelves of the store, wondering what they did to deserve such a fate. To be floating in a lifeless dump like this, dogs barking from somewhere behind, birds chirping down the way, and some kind of muffled sounds from humans sticking their hands under the betta fish on the shelf below. Kiera asked what I thought about betta fish. It seemed important for her to know what I thought specifically about betta fish. I said I felt bad for them trapped in these tiny bowls, lined up on a dirty shelf with too many food flakes covering the surface of their water in a junky cheap pet store with hardly enough water to oxygen ratio to keep them alive. She smiled, a devious smile. Betta fish appeared on the table at Neil's house during 2011, late in the year when I felt pressured to visit his home after being traumatized. I had been running away from Neil for years. There was something important about betta fish, or the reference to betta fish, but I don't know what it is. I blame the 2010 Dragon Boat race, partially, of course, not fully, for serving as a conduit through which Kiera entered my scene. This is the boat race held on the Schuylkill River every summer. It all goes down the race just past Boathouse Row, where teams made up of brawny ladies and eccentric men paddle their way to victory in vessels crafted into fanciful shapes embellished in ornate paintings. Severely shaped dragons rearing their heads, their eyes bulging out. She wasn't participating, Kiera. She was lounging at base camp, plopped in a chair, loafing a bit, where all participants set up tents, ice coolers, makeshift tables, blankets, and barbecue grills in typical tailgate style. Standard fare for an event like this taking place along Philly's infamous Kelly Drive. The event wasn't standard for me, though. It was a brand new adventure, one I genuinely was excited about because I'd be participating on a team, an actual team. Like so many others who feel like estranged misanthropes existing in a world we don't understand, teams, pods, and mobs of people, such groupings are avoided for the most part for much of life. This meant never having experienced how teams operated, what the dynamics were, or what exactly they could be used for, good, bad, or somewhere in between. Instead, I learned early on in life that people betrayed each other, deceived them, oftentimes willfully and sometimes gleefully. Sad but true, which might very well be the reason why a strong aversion to group dynamics occurred to begin with. The boat race, however, was, in a way, symbolic for me. I was slaying the dragon, if you will, finally reaching beyond that mean old yesterday and beginning to realize that within this world there might also be people, networks of people even, who didn't betray and deceive. With this newfound trust, I ventured out into the wild, slowly attempting to engage with others, utilizing the little trust I had, some might say participating in life. In this pursuit, it was Team Farmonica, the organization I mentioned earlier with the Iranian lady who introduced me to dragon boat racing. They were in charge of tasks like ordering t-shirts, organizing fundraising events, and arranging travel plans for anyone wanting to attend the gay games, a 4-year tradition of Olympic-style games held in various cities throughout the world. That's when I saw her for the first time, Kiera. She was lounging in a low-lying lawn chair, one of the cheap, lightweight ones, its weaved green and white ribbons sunk low from the weight of her body, forming a permanent and very large dent. Kiera wore a baseball cap, covering much of her head, the bill of it hiding her eyes. At the time, she didn't come across as a plopper or a loafer. I say that out of spite now that I know the truth, but she was just lounging. Something within her triggered something within me. Whatever it was instant. That blue streak of recognition thing again. That thing that triggers a deep need for me to meet and connect with someone. Unfortunately, back then, it had to do with being prey to a predator. She was reclining softly in the long chair, if that's possible, with her milky white skin, voluptuous body, hazel eyes, full lips, and demure energy. As if she need not to even lift a finger to lure a sweet, innocent, cute ladybug with its little polka-dotted wings into her web. My antenna detected her more than 200 feet away while we, the team, marched from the boat dock towards base camp after the first round of races. It was as if she was the only one there, that all else around her fell to the backdrop. Who is that? I thought to myself, stretching my neck to see if I could catch her eyes under the covertly positioned hat. But in addition to her hat hanging low, Kiera's beach chair was partially hidden and tucked under a Miller's Light umbrella so that she was shielded from the hot, blistering sun, like a precious, delicate, and frail wannabe queen bee, who needed to be protected from the elements and wouldn't dare step foot into one of those smelly dragon boats that bumped up against the floating dock, riddled with gnarly barnacles in a clammy river. But as I approached the blanket to walk towards her, someone from my team, a Peruvian girl who possessed a Polish last name ending in ski, darted out of nowhere to plant herself right beside Kiera like a sloppy, sweaty Barajo drunk who made it just in the nick of time. As if she was a baseball player who slid into second base, her rear almost toppling off the aluminum armrest of the lawn chair. I mentioned her back in the chapter on Piper and Claire. It was Ophelia. She extended her arm across Kiera's knees to reach inside the cooler resting on the opposite side of the lawn chair queen. She yanked out a bottle of beer, twisted off the twist cap, and began guzzling like a warthog. I gasped internally. Intercepted, I thought, a pang shuddering through my insides. Ophelia snuggled up to Kiera to indicate the milky white-skinned girl was hers, like a possession. Her trophy, her boo, she called her. My hopes deflated. The mystery girl with the demure energy and forbidden eyes hidden under the baseball cap was spoken for. But I wasn't completely deterred. I still wanted to befriend them, to find out more about them, maybe hang out sometime, whatever. After all, I didn't know Kiera, and both of them seemed approachable. In fact, I kind of liked Ophelia because she, as one of the team members, offered me a hand when struggling for good footing as I stepped out of the dragon boat and onto the floating dock just after the first race. They both pointed to the cooler and said I could have an ice-cold beer if I wanted. Oh, no thanks, I said, half laughing and waving my arm out as if to say, don't be silly, gosh. Beer was never my style, even though I often wished it was. If I could down a few beers, I'm sure I'd have a ton more friends. Could have learned much earlier on about stuff like teams and how to join secret underground movements. You know, get the intel on the goings-on in this crazy world. Be a part of it all. But after many attempts to guzzle a Yingling or a honey brewed lager in cans or bottles, domestic and imported, believe me, I've tried it all. I've never been able to force myself to enjoy beer. My body spews it out every time. You know the saying about acquired tastes? It's a lie. Maybe told by the Irish to make it seem they too actually had to force themselves to drink. That's an overarching statement, of course. So please, no attacks by the Irish. We've got our Russians and Czechs too. Ha ha ha. Just some humor there. But anyway, point being, the acquired taste ideology is not always true. I'm telling you, I tried hard, especially in a never-ending attempt to join in with the crowd. Wine suits me better. I can do wine. I'm not a total prude about alcohol. It's just I don't know how to control my bodily reactions. Having said all that, the day was scorching, a cooker with temperatures pushing the 100s and humidity creating indexes of 104 degrees. Philly was akin to a living and breathing sauna with too many coals on the fire, tended to by an overzealous spa attendant in the sky. I'd reached my limit. I couldn't take it. With sweat beading down my forehead and dripping onto the blanket, I leaned over in quick motion, popped the lid off the cooler, and reached in for an ice-cold bottle of beer. It happened so quickly I couldn't believe it myself. I was practically panting. Kiera and Ophelia watched on, horrified looks creeping across their faces. One bead of sweat dripped from Ophelia's chin in slow motion down to her hand holding a beer. I rocked back to a seated position on the blanket, glanced up to notice them eyeing me, and gave a look, eyes wide open, as if to say, what? You offered? Okay, I admit it, so the way in which I grabbed the beer was borderline cumbersome, but I'd surrendered. Anything ice cold and dripping with condensation was looking game at the time. Did it taste great? No, not really, but it was refreshing. Just holding the ice cold glass bottle helped. Despite my not so smooth Rico Suave beer guzzling attempt, we struck up a conversation. We talked about where we were from, what we did for a living, the usual. They revealed that they lived together in an apartment. Can you hand me the Santon lotion, please? Sweet. The SPF 41, that copper tone bottle over there, Kiera gestured to Ophelia. Just the two of them lived together in a cat. Oh, just the two of them lived together with a cat and a dog. Here you go, Boo, my little boo-boo. Ophelia crossed the blanket to fetch the lotion, which was closer to Kiera than Ophelia. My heart sank further down into my chest. They were seriously committed, not just dating. I told them I was a dog walker and a pet sitter. If you ever need someone. I held up my beer bottle and gestured it their way. Their interest was piqued. They were going on vacation to visit family in North Carolina late that summer. Maybe I could check in on their whippet and their brown and white spotted cat, which, they joked, ran the roost. Perfect, I thought, still looking for as much business as possible, but knowing dog walking was about so much more than work. It was like I mentioned before, about potential relationships. People I could get to know and through whom I could meet others. You know, a way to immerse myself into the community I love so much. I was more than happy to do it. This is what I mean when I say sometimes in this book that I was almost there. I was on my way to finally cultivating relationships with people who seemed to be like-minded, kind, and cool. Cool in a good way. Possible, forever friends. The afternoon on the river unfolded with rounds of qualifying races until the best teams were determined. Team Pharmonica kept qualifying round after round so that we ultimately placed in the top 3 teams. Back at camp, fellow team members cooked hamburgers, hot dogs, veggie burgers, and even barbecued chicken on one of the many grills dug up from the basements and out from their garages. George Foreman grills, Coleman tripod grills, 2 highly sophisticated gas grills with all the bells and whistles, and a few questionable disposable grills only as strong as Reynolds Wrap made their way to our picnic area. Though I was still fumbling around a bit socially inept, I was, nonetheless, engaging with others. I'd even invited Piper and Claire to the race to check out the scene, but they sent a text message saying they forgot which day it was and were headed down to the beach instead. They only realized while cruising down Route 1 in Delaware that it was race day. I was disappointed because they were so psyched about making an appearance. Made a big production about it and everything, so much so I was just about desperate for them to show up to help me look 20% more social than I might have been. What can I say? But the crowds at the boat race and all the people from my team offset their flakiness. It wasn't so awful they didn't show. This is how social life works for real, I figured. People change plans all the time. Sometimes they show up, sometimes they flake out. Whatever, that's life. I flaked out on people plenty. I understood. While sitting on a blanket, I glanced up to notice Kiera clinging to Ophelia and pinching the side of her shirt while loitering by one of the propane gas grills. She eyed me as if she wanted Ophelia to protect her. From me. As if she was relaying information to her girlfriend that cast me in a bad light. I didn't know this for sure and couldn't imagine what it could have been about other than the guerrilla-style reach for the beer, so I figured I was reading into it too much. Wandered off to find out what other teams were cooking up in the vicinity while keeping an ear out for the next race call. It wasn't too long before our team gathered in a circle and sat on a patch of grass about 1/8 of a mile up from base camp where all the porta-potty queens were. This was just prior to the final race, the medal round. We were in a sort of holding pattern before our team would be called out to the docks. During that time, I caught Ophelia peering over at me with suspicious eyes from the opposite side of the circle. This caused more discomfort and insecurity than I already had about the new adventure. But I was determined to not feel intimidated, and once again I brushed it off, chalking it up to my own social anxiety and inexperience. So I will leave it there. That is the chapter on Kiera, The Sad State of, Chapter 10. Thank you so much, and please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.